hear you're ready for your dose of reality.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Dr. Quack Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Quack.
And I'm the important one, Mr. Mayhem. Today is a pretty big topic, but independent wrestlers, WWE talent, AEW, TNA, ROH, you all need to pay attention to this. We're talking about Spotfest 2021 and why Spotfest are awful.
Yes, I mean, how many times have you seen during a match where you've got to see 50 super kicks in a match? Or if you watch an entire card, everybody wants to drop an elbow off the top. These are things that, you got to watch what you do when you are booking and when you're working in a show.
Yes, the problem is everybody's become cookie cutter. Everybody does everybody's moves. Moves don't mean anything anymore. Used to be just Randy Savage was the only person to drop an elbow from the top rope. Now a lot of people drop moves from the top rope. It used to be just Chris Adams threw a super kick. Now everybody has too many super kicks. The biggest problem with Spotfest 2021 is everybody thinks they need to, one, get all your stuff in, and two, think you have to throw everything at the wall. You do not have to.
No, and you look at the WWE, when they generally go for a match, it's usually, here, we want guy A to hit his moves, we want guy B to hit his moves, and we want it all done within 7 minutes, so that way everybody can get their stuff in and we go to commercial.
But even that is kind of bad in the storytelling sense of you're only doing the marketing parts of the moves. You're not telling a story. In the 1970s and 1980s, Jim Cornette will always go over this, so I'm going to give a plug. Check out some of Jim Cornette's drive-through where he talks about wrestling in the 70s and 80s. $100,000, $150,000 a year for a guy you'd never heard of. 15,000, 20,000 people in the arenas every week because they knew how to tell a story and make you come back to see something else. When you give them everything every single time, there is no more story. They're just watching a stunt show and those get old.
Exactly. I mean, guys today, they're lucky on the independent circuit if they're getting paid $50. Most of them, if you're really good, you might make a couple hundred. If you're really, really good, you might make $5. But most of these guys, they're getting paid pretty much hot dog and a handshake.
Yes, and now what we're going to be talking about is Spotfest. When I came up through the wrestling training and getting trained, I learned to have a 30-second discussion in the back about what the opening of the match is going to be. The opening, by the way, is the beginning of how the story is going to be told, what the story is going to be. If it was Dr. Quack against the important one, Mr. Mayhem, the story would probably be David and Goliath because he's 5'8" and I'm 6'4". So that could be a David and Goliath story. We want a 30 seconds of how we're going to establish that. And that's all we needed to talk about in the open. Nowadays, guys email each other for weeks to write these matches, write out move for move, and then when somebody forgets, it's really obvious.
Exactly. No need to Shakespeare. It's called on the fly, fellas and ladies. That is exactly what you're supposed to do, on the fly. The main things you cover when you're talking is you're talking about your opening, you're talking about your finish, and you may have one spot in there that you may want to throw in there, but that's about it.
Yes, if you were to work me as the veteran, normally this is another thing when you're working on the independent circuit, if there is no established veteran, and what I mean by an established veteran is more than 6 years in the ring over you, if you're both about the same talent level, same skill level, you're both on the independent circuit, the heel calls the match.
Yes.
It shouldn't be a spot fest where you have to remember all these different spots. You should have your 30-second discussion. The heel should gauge the crowd, listening for the shine, listening for when the shine is starting to fade, when the heat is starting to become too much that you're starting to, overwork the face. the heels need to learn to listen to those things and not try and write them into a script. You should be doing it by listening to the crowd. That's, again, what we discussed in our previous video about promoters want to hear those crowd reactions. That's what they're judging. If you're telling the story or if you wrote it out and emailed it to each other trying to invent it.
And if you're a young independent wrestler, these are things you should be doing here. I'm going to tell you one. When you're talking to the vet, and right now he's the vet in this, okay? If I'm going to him, he might ask me, he might go, what are your 5 gives and what are your 5 takes?
I would actually do it this way. All right, so we're working each other today. They've told us we've got 12 minutes, and they want you to go over because we're going to start building you up. So what are 2 or 3 things you do really, really well so we can get some good crowd behind you?
I love to do a body slam, but I know I can't do that on you. So
we can work something around that. We can actually use that, show your strength towards the end.
Yeah, maybe there. I'm good with my drop kick.
Okay.
I like to do a neck breaker as well.
Alrighty. What's your finisher?
My finisher is called the malpractice, where I come from behind with a stethoscope and I hit you with a neck breaker. But that's not going to work with you because you're kind of big.
Okay. And see, right here, he understands his role that in the storytelling process, psychology. He's 5'8", I'm 6'4". He's not going to be able to pick me up. There's a 145-pound weight difference. So he understands this. Seth Rollins shouldn't be power bombing 280-pound men at 210 pounds. That's what we mean by psychology. So, going on, continue with that. So, how about instead of that neck breaker, we can still do that, but what we can do is I can miss something in the corner and have you hit a neck breaker. Are you comfortable coming off the rope?
Yeah, that works perfect.
All right, so then we're going to go out there. We'll do a little 30 seconds where I try and throw some punches. I want you to duck him, give me a couple of quick shots, give me a drop kick, I'm going to powder, and then we'll talk about it from there.
See, perfect. That's all you really have to do.
We did that. Besides coming back to you guys, that was about a 45-second discussion. We discussed the opening, we discussed the finish, we discussed the story. You need to, you guys out there, this is what you need to work on, because if something goes wrong, somebody forgets something or somebody gets hurt, can't do some of the moves you planned, if you have no way to work around it, you guys look horrible, and it kills everybody.
Yeah, I mean, some things should have been taught by your trainer if you haven't noticed. If you don't hear what your opponent is saying to you, grab that rope, grab it, hold on to it. He'll chop you one and he'll say it again. That's generally things that, people don't realize. Like, oh no, I didn't hear what he said, but I'm going to go through it anyways, and then it looks like crap.
Yep, and also one other thing. Some veterans, Ric Flair is a prime example. He'll call something to you coming 3 minutes later. When you're told something, get ready for that next thing. Always have it in the back of your mind. Ric Flair would famously come up to you, and I'm going to throw a very light chop. I'm not swinging for the fences, and he's going to go, watch the knee. And then he's going to go off doing his little thing, and he's going to come up and he's going to poke your eye, and then he throws another couple of chops, and then he sweeps the leg, and that's when he's going for the knee drop.
Correct. You need to be able to learn these things. Also, you may not be able to talk because there may be enough noise in the stadium. So you need to know what's coming here. Clothesline, back elbow. You need to know with the hand signals as well.
There's also one more hand signal old vets use.
Right.
That's how many pin counts you're going to be listening for when they kick out. If he taps his chest once, it's going to be a 1 count. If he taps his chest and hold it, it's a 2 count. If he taps his chest and puts his hand down next to him, it's going to be one of those what they call long 2s, which means he barely kicks out. If he taps his hand on his chest, that means he wants you to drop an elbow or drop a leg or something on his chest.
Yeah, I mean, these are things that, as we say, trainers should be training their students on. But, most trainers are out there to teach you how to bump, possibly how to sell, and pretty much be job meat at the beginning because you need to learn this on your own. This is why we do this stuff here.
Yes, and it's important when you go through your training to figure out what you give well, what you take well, and what you don't give well and don't take well. Because as on our conversation we discussed, if he were in this case, you're now the veteran. Ask me those questions.
Yeah, so what's your big give and take here?
All right, I take a really good clothesline over the top rope. I think it'd make you look really good. Please do not ask me to give you an arm drag. I spike people every time, but I take one very well. So if you want to give me an arm drag, I'm fine with that. Just don't ask me to give you one.
All right, boom. And you see how that works.
because you have to know what moves you give well and take well. For a guy my size, I can do what they know is the Undertaker clothesline over the top rope backwards, land on the floor. It looks really good and it makes the opponent look really strong. But if I were to give an arm drag, I have a problem with dropping people on their head. I never figured out how to give a proper arm drag, but I take them very well. So you're protecting your opponent and making yourself look good by telling that veteran what moves you don't take well, or what moves you do take well to add to the match.
Exactly. Like there's a move here I do off the top. I pretty much do a swanton bomb where I tell them to miss. I have never hit it in a match. You can go through the archives if you can find them. But I tell them to move. So that way it makes it look very devastating and the guy can take over.
There you go. So that's leading to another thing. The takeover and what they call the Iggies and the hand signals. These are other ways that you don't have to plan these matches. An Iggy, when you're out there with somebody and you're checking on somebody, it's just that little hand squeeze. Like when you watch, when the person's laying like this, the referee comes up and grabs hands. What he's doing, the referee's making sure they're not hurt. It's just a little hand squeeze, and it's called the Iggy. So that's how they're checking on each other. You also do that when you're doing wrestling moves. Like if I were to have him in an arm bar here, just a small arm bar, and he feels me squeeze his arm. You can't tell I did it, but he knows now he wants me to reverse him or take over. So those are little things of how you learn to work together, not plan together, because it's called work, it's not called plan.
A big thing I've learned is this. The booker, right? That's a short word for book. He is the one writing the book. You guys are the characters in that story. When he's writing that book, that first match, you are that characters in that chapter. You guys are telling a story, like David versus Goliath and such. So that is exactly how it should be. Don't try to do things that you know will make the match look stupid.
Yes, and the last thing is try and come up with your own move set. You know, what we've just been talking about earlier. Everybody throws a super kick. Try to be a little different. You know how you get noticed? You be different. I'm going to throw one thing out here. It's a thing I've never seen. Maybe I want to see somebody doing this. I want somebody to only work the gut. Don't throw clotheslines. Throw gut punches. Throw knees to the stomach. Instead of suplexing somebody, suplex them onto the ropes. Do gut busters. Do side backbreakers instead of the Bret Hart style backbreakers. Work the gut. That is something different. Doing things different. Dressing different. That's what gets you noticed. Quit being the guy that does 55 super kicks with everybody. Try doing something a little bit different. You might get noticed.
Exactly, and learn how to chain. I'm going to tell you, just because I posted this on there, just because you can do a 450 splash or a shooting star press, doesn't mean you can work. Learn to chain. Work the crowd.
Yes, and the last thing we're going to say on this one is, if you watched one of the downfalls of WCW, WCW did a great job with the cruiserweight division, putting over those young guys who don't get a lot of chances. The problem with cruiserweights is they throw everything at the wall every single time. Tell me if you watch an entire pay-per-view of nothing but cruiserweights, at about halfway point you're like, are we done yet? Wrestling is about less is more. You should only give everything you have when it's a title match or it's like the year-end show or something like that. Other than that, 2 or 3 things, just give them a little taste. Make them want to come back for more. If you've given them the whole buffet, eventually they get full.
Exactly. And that's it for us here on episode 4 here. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something. If you can, write down in the comments if you've learned something here. We're really curious who's paying attention here. And I want to see somebody take them up on your challenge here.
I would love to see it. I want to see somebody who dorks nothing but the gut, and if you make it all the way to the top, I will not ask for a single dime. That is my guarantee to you. I want you to make it on your own, but I'm giving somebody something new.
And next week, what are we going over next week?
Next week, we've looked at the things that we've discussed, and we've decided that everybody needs to know what your job description is and what everybody else on the show and behind the scenes job description is. Because some promoters get mad at talent because talent doesn't know what they have to do, and talent gets mad because they don't think the promoters are listening to them. The problem is you guys don't know what each other all goes through, so we're going to explain next week what everybody's duty description is on the show.
So stay tuned for What's Your Job. I'm your host, Dr. Quack.
And I'm the important one, Mr. Mayhem, saying we hope you learned something today. We hope you take something from what we've learned. We want independent wrestling to start thriving again. It would be nice to see those 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 shows, people in the shows every single week. It would be great to see again. Maybe you can help it happen.
And we're out.